Welcome, everyone, to Beyond Surviving, the safe space for survivors of childhood sexual abuse to receive support, resources, and share their stories. Beyond Surviving is about freedom, healing, connection, and even laughter and fun. Most importantly, it's about letting go of the pain of abuse and finally moving on. I'm Rachel Grant, and for those of you who don't yet know me, I've been a sexual abuse recovery coach since 2007, and I'm the author of Beyond Surviving, the final stage of recovery from sexual abuse. You can learn more about me and the Beyond Surviving program at rachelgrantcoaching.com. Now, everybody listening, if you have been following the podcast this year, you know that every month I have been highlighting a Beyond Surviving graduate. And as we come into this final month of 2021, I cannot think of a better person to wrap up this series with than Hélène Clabecq. She is going to be here sharing with us about her journey to Beyond Surviving and becoming a voice for change. When I first met her, she was in such a beautiful place in her life and doing so many wonderful, marvelous things, and was ready to really take things up to the next level. It was such a joy to walk alongside her. And now Hélène helps high-level entrepreneurs, artists, and activists who go against the grain articulate and spread their disruptive stories effectively and impactfully. She has created the Lives Disrupted agency to enhance the personal brand of the next generation of leaders and influencers and recreate their messages from an authentic and meaningful standpoint so they can get their stories in front of the right audience. She graduated from the Beyond Surviving program in October 2019, and it is such a joy to be here today. Ellen, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you for this beautiful introduction. Really appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, my goodness, when we decided to reconnect to do this podcast together, I was really thrilled that you threw your hat in the ring for this opportunity because I know that you are somebody who really cares so very much about being out in the world and helping people find their voices. And it's been, part of your own journey has been that. And with sharing whatever you want to share with our audience so they can just get to know you a little bit, there was a very particular moment in your life where you made the decision that you were going to take some steps to really overcome the abuse that you experienced. Maybe you can talk a little bit with us about that and what really shifted and changed once you made up your mind that you were going to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And like there's so much to say on this topic. I would start by saying that when I decided to take steps, um, actually I didn't remember my abuse at that time. I just realized after seeing an interview with you back then that I could relate to everything you were describing when
Mm.
it came to the consequences of an abuse in someone's life. And I was like, all those things are happening to me all the time. Like, this is me that you're describing, like the survivor of an abuse. However, I couldn't pinpoint anything specific that had happened in my life. And that's what's really interesting because further down the line, I realized that I had put everything into my unconscious.
Mhm.
The
Yes.
trauma was so big for me that I chose to forget about it and move forward. However, it had still impacted me deeply because I couldn't set my boundaries. I couldn't, like share my voice. I couldn't communicate my needs. I couldn't say no very well. It had impacted my relationships with men, mainly, in business, in private, and so on. And anyways, I couldn't really understand why I was experiencing that, but I still knew that it was really important for me to start taking action and change my behavioral patterns. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that piece because I think for anybody who's listening who identifies with that, I hope it helps to reassure you that this can be a very normal part of the healing journey, that you may not necessarily have very clear, specific memories. But yet, as you listen and think about the way that you're showing up in your world or the challenges that you're experiencing, what's happening for you in your day to day, it's like, oh, all of that like is lining up with the symptoms and the outcomes of abuse. And the good news is that we don't have to necessarily try to recall all of those memories in order to heal. And that was a big part of our journey together, was just working with what you were experiencing, and every once in a while being able to touch upon origins, but mostly just kind of shifting things from the perspective of what's going on right now and what do we need to do differently. And so as you took on that journey, what are some of the things that you have really noticed has most really changed as a result of that healing work that you've done?
Mm. So, bringing awareness to the problem and accepting it and realizing that this is not normal was really, big for me. And then being able to talk to someone who has experienced something similar, who understands and who has overcome it, then it actually shows you that it's possible to change. You don't have to stay in a loop and make the same mistakes, so to speak, all the time. Like, it's possible to step out of that. And what's interesting is that, in the work that I do, I showcase people that have overcome transformations, but I never really looked at my own life, I never really
Yeah.
um, was, like spending time and effort looking inside and realizing that I can also transform myself at such a deep level. So that was really beautiful to take some time to do that. And what has changed is, I would say, more confidence to, put myself out there and share my own story. Because, like I said, I've spent so much time sharing the stories of others and realizing that I can also help other women. I can also be a voice for change, like you said earlier, and that's what I want as well.
Yeah.
Because I think we experience, uh, painful situations sometimes in a way. I wouldn't say for a reason, but I would say that why not make the most out of it? Whatever happened, happened, and why not use that for the good?
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Why not? I mean, we experienced it. We can either suffer because of it, or we can learn, heal, grow, and become our better self as a result of those
Yeah.
experiences. And that's a process. But I think it's part of that healing process, is letting pain become purpose. And you certainly
Yeah.
are doing that out in the world. And I think one of the things that we talked a lot about in our work together was just how to show up in the world in a way that was really empowered. The industry that you're in, the circles that you run, you're up against a lot when it comes to being a woman in that industry, in the world of, I mean, how would you name your industry? I always think of it as like publication and kind of media. Is that the way that you think of it as
Right.
well?
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. Media, communication. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean,
Um,
for you, what difference has that really made? Like being able to own your story, feeling more empowered, feeling more confident, as you run into maybe some of the things that you run into in your day to day. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that.
yeah, it's a really good question. As a part of my job, I need to hold space for people as they they walk through their journey. They talk about very vulnerable and authentic moments that they have experienced. And some of them, I would say most of them, are people that I've just met, you know. it's either complete strangers or people who already have a voice in the media, who already have, some sort of authority and influence. So it's all about making people feel comfortable sharing parts of themselves that they have slipped under the rug
Mm.
most of the times, and that they associated with guilt and shame, and help them understand that this is essential to their journey. This is essential to their identity, you know? Um, so I would say that me being confident with my own story, of course, me being able to embody that
Mm.
is definitely important when it comes to my own credibility.
Mhm.
Um, so I think it was mandatory for me to, like walk the talk, basically.
Right,
Mhm.
right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. And just being able to walk into those meetings or walk into those, communities with your sense of self really solid. A lot of that anxiety, I remember us talking about that, your anxiety kind of spiking at times. And I think we all go through that when we've experienced trauma, that those moments of insecurity. And so, how beautiful that you've really been able to shift that energy for yourself.
Yeah, and there's really this thing where we all have some sort of sexual energy, which is in actuality our life force.
Yes.
And when it is distorted, my perspective, my understanding is that it can uh, disturb your relationship in the sense that they feel that something is not fully healed.
Mm.
And so people, even sometimes unconsciously, can take advantage of that or get attracted to that. And so, what was happening to me also in my business interaction sometimes would be that there would be this sort of, sexual tension
Yeah.
that I didn't want to have, or I would be bullied for being like naturally sensual,
Mhm.
unwantedly. And I think that's the biggest issue that I had to face and I had to navigate back then, because I didn't understand why that kept on happening.
Mm.
And that's because I couldn't really set my boundaries, and that's because I didn't have that confidence, and I wasn't able to communicate clearly why I was there and what I wanted, and that my goal was to move forward in the business relationship, and all of a
Mm.
sudden the person is asking me on a date, and it's just like really confusing and really strange.
Right.
So that happened many times, and yeah, I really had to start working on that to move forward, basically,
Mhm.
in my
Yeah, and isn't
career.
that interesting? Because, one of the things we talk about a lot is that, a lot of times survivors have this idea that we're like drawing in people to abuse us. And what's really happening is that people who want to push boundaries and be abusive are going to just test limits with whoever is in front of them.
Yeah,
And what we have to be able to do is exactly what you just said, set the boundary. Because I'm guessing that you're still running into that here and there, that it still comes up, but you respond to it in a wholly different way today than you did before.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. And I talked about this also with other female entrepreneurs or other women that have a lot of face-to-face interactions with men, and I
Mhm.
wrote about it, and it's really something that I had to reflect on for a long time, to realize that yes, it is something that can easily be changed. You just need to have the tools. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah.
And part of my working with you also shed the light on all those things.
Yeah, I definitely remember those conversations. I was like, "What? You did what?" Oh man, yeah, just like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
very
tough
vivid.
industry. It's a tough place to be in. You know, being a working woman in any industry, you can run into misogyny, people pushing boundaries, these sorts of things. So being really embodied, almost coming right back to that place where you were starting from, right? Being embodied, being settled, being confident, and really having, I think, exactly what you just named there, like that toolkit which you and I worked on, you know, a lot. Like, how do you respond? What do you say? What are those communication strategies? How do you set things up in the beginning, you know, to potentially minimize and reduce the risk? And I'm so glad that you're just, you know, out there badass and bold and you know, taking the world by storm.
Yeah, for sure. And
Absolutely.
like I think it's important for any man or woman to really learn those, interactive skills with other if they
Yeah.
have experienced any sort of trauma. Because
Mm,
what I realized was that this was preventing me from living my truth. And this was preventing me from living in alignment and pursuing my passion because I wasn't feeling good enough to do that, you
yeah.
know? Um, and that's why for me it's crucial if you want to live fully, like your life, then we have to look into those little dark sides of us. We have to acknowledge them, look at them, and forgive and move on,
Mm,
and really move
yeah.
on. And like the way that you do it, which is really what I like too, is the fact that you don't stop there. It's about the next chapter of people's lives. It's not about, oh, now I realize that I was this victim and now I'm going to use that to my advantage and I'm going to use that to get people to pity me or whatever. It's really, okay, that was it. It was just a facet, like a little part of my story. And there's so much more that is waiting for me.
Mm.
It's about going beyond.
100%. Oh my goodness. So, in your beyond surviving life, you have really been becoming more and more committed to working with women and becoming a voice of change for women. So, we're going to take a little break. And when we come back, I want to hear more about what you're up to in the world these days. Okay, we'll be right back.
For survivors of abuse, shame can be one of the most pervasive feelings we carry well after the abuse has ended. As a result of trauma, we come to believe that we are at fault or to blame for what's happened. Then this transforms into a deeply rooted way of being that impacts our sense of self. We come to believe that we are unlovable, and then we find ourselves constantly in self blame, shame, and in derogatory or negative thinking. In my Shake Off the Shame Masterclass, you will gain access to my proven process that will help you feel more confident and secure so you can put an end to taking care of everyone but you. You can identify the toxic shame-based beliefs that keep you trapped in a cycle of taking the blame for everything and how to overcome them, and learn practical, easy-to-use strategies for how to escape shame and finally love who you are. Go to rachelgrantcoaching.com/shame-class to download this MP3 masterclass today. Now back to our show.
Welcome back, everyone. So, Helen, tell us a little bit more about the way that you are showing up in the world as a voice for change for women. I want to know all about that.
Thank you so much. So for me, there's two different aspects. It's the way I show up in the world myself. What kind of figure of change do I want to be? And the second is the type of women that I work with. And I also work a lot with men about the types of women that I work with. What is it that I want to showcase about them? What is it that I want to extract at this time? And, working with people in all walks of life, what kept coming up for women in particular was that they were perceived for their appearance,
Mm,
and people put them in a box,
yeah.
whether that would be, ex-models or CEOs or engineer females or even porn stars, it's like, how are you able to be a free woman in
Mm,
this day and age and being unapologetically yourself and do what you love and also embrace the fact that you can be, this, yeah, like I said, free, sensual woman that takes care of herself, but also that is moving forward and has a business and can have um, deep conversations and make moves in the world. So that's really what I've been focusing on extracting and showing that we are multifaceted, and that is so important,
very much so.
and when it comes to me, it's the same thing. It's I don't want to have to hide parts of my personality. I don't want to have to choose between one and another. I don't want to be put in a box. And I want to have open conversation about all types of topics. So, yeah, I would say that's really what I've been focusing on. And it's been taking me so much time to, find a content strategy for all this. And I'm still refining it and reflecting on it all the time, constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. One thing that I'm really touched by that you said there is just the ways in which women become very kind of boxed in and pigeonholed, and being your own advocate becomes so important, whether it's in a personal relationship, a friendship, in a work environment. What are some of the maybe tools or strategies or some of the things that you've come to know that really help you the most, that you like to share with other women when it comes to being exactly that, having their own voice, being an advocate for themselves? What are some of the things they need to know or do in order to really excel at that?
Right. I would say a big one that I have learned and also that I have discussed with other interviewees um, who have experienced the same thing is that sometimes people have expectations of you when they first meet you. They haven't even talked to you, but
Mhm.
they're going to make their own idea of you. And what you have to remember is that this happens to everyone, and it's only their perspective, is their own filters that they see life through. So whatever they expect from you is only their own imagination, is their own reality, doesn't define you. And if you come across, let's say you're at a networking event and you come across a man and you start having a conversation, and all of a sudden they say, "Oh, I didn't expect you to have deep conversations,"
Oh man.
or uh,
Jeez.
things like that.
Yeah.
Don't let this stop you, or don't let this, take you off your
Mm.
chair. Just remember that this person has maybe unfortunately not had that many interesting interactions with women, or he hasn't let himself do
Yeah.
that, and
Right,
so
right, right.
it's only about his experience. And even if it doesn't sound like a compliment, in a way it comes from a place where the person wants to express um, their emotions, and maybe it's not fully expressed the right way, but it's don't judge yourself. That's what I'm saying. Don't judge yourself. Don't try to change anything about you, because you are perfect as it is. um, I think it's about teaching men sometimes, like teaching others that yes, you can do anything, and sometimes the appearance doesn't reflect who the person is inside, but the only way to know is by
Mm,
getting to know them,
yeah.
and that's the case with everyone.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say, yeah, just like never question yourself in that way, and maybe laugh at it. Like I think it's funny now. I'm
Right.
like, ah,
Right.
well, you
It's
have
an
no idea.
interesting approach to say, what I hear you saying is that in some ways it's about giving somebody the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah,
And maybe it's what happens next. I think that oftentimes if we get immediately offended and then therefore we shut down and we shut
yeah,
down the communication and we shut the person out, then we have also shut out any opportunity to help them expand and grow and basically break out of the stereotyping that they just fell into. But if
yeah,
we can
exactly.
kind of bypass our ego a little bit and get curious with that person and maybe start a conversation that evolves their perspective, that evolves their understanding, and there's evidence that they're open to this, right? If you don't see any of that happening, then for sure walk away. But I
Yeah,
think there's something very powerful that when you are in your own voice, when you are strong in who you are, that people can say things and it can kind of land as like, what? Like, one thing that just comes to mind for me is this moment the other day where I, posted something about an upcoming program, and one of the comments was, "Anybody who earns money doing this work is evil." And I was like, "Whoa, wow, that is so fascinating!" Like that's so wrapped up in their own
yeah,
judgments, their
yeah,
own preconceptions about, all sorts of things like money and help and support. And I, took it offline with that person. We had a dialogue via messenger, and it was really fascinating to see like how her perspective evolved and changed,
yeah,
by way of my engaging rather than getting kind of upset about it or shutting it down. So yeah, and you're finding that this is a skill that you want to support women in having, because we're running into this all of the time, right? We run.
It's really frustrating, it's
Mm,
like exhausting to have to explain it, but at the same time I realize that depending on the circles that I uh, um, gravitate,
mm,
towards, perceptions are very different, because I can talk to other men that are gonna be like, so what? Like, everything's normal and everything's fine. It's really depends on the person's background
yeah.
and where they're coming from and what their past has been like
Hmm.
with women, and
Yeah.
so yeah, that's a big one, but I would say it's not even just a problem for for women, that we are
Agreed.
being put in boxes, because
Oh yeah.
I've talked about it. So, for instance, with a friend several days ago, who on his social media is all about making money, like spending time on yachts and, like popping champagne and all this. And you want to put him maybe in a box where it's like, okay, this man is superficial. But actually, when you
Yeah.
have a conversation with him, you realize he's learned so much about life, and he's using that to attract people that don't know better, to then teach them that this is not it. Like, this is not
Mhm.
the goal. And he has learned it the hard way. But the only way to, how to say, like, he still lives that life and he still showcases
Mm,
that, but he knows there's so much more, and only his closest friends know who he really is.
yeah.
And then you have, for example, this other girl, a friend of mine. She's from China, and she considers herself as a man, you know. So I could actually say
Mhm.
he has a short hair, street style and everything. Uh, he's short in size, but the most talented videographer, filmmaker that I have ever seen,
Mm,
ever in my life. And so he was explaining that when he meets clients, they're like, who's this little kid? Like, I'm not even
Oh,
gonna talk to
right.
him. Like,
Immediately
no,
dismissed.
no
Yeah.
respect, no
Yeah.
respect. And he's like used to that now, so he plays with that and actually uses it to then surprise them with the quality of his work,
Mhm.
because they have zero expectation, and then he's showing up like doing the best work that he can, and then people
Have
are
mad
really like
respect after that, right? Like, I'm not
mad
gonna say
respect.
anything about this guy. Right.
Like
Right.
that's just a part of what it is. Like it's
Yeah.
there's no need to like try to like get mad at it. It's just it's completely fine. What matters is the work, and your work speaks for itself.
Mm.
You know, and also your behavior in life in general. It's like how do you show up in the world, and that's what matters. And everybody's gonna look at you in a different way.
Yeah.
But how do you look at yourself? How much do you love yourself? How much do you love what you do and what you achieve? And that's the most important.
Yeah, cheers to that, Ellen. I think that there's something to be said for getting to a place in your life where people's opinions of you matter less and less and less. Maybe there's an inner circle of people who you pay a little bit closer attention to their feedback, and they help you stay on course. But ultimately, everybody's going to have an opinion. Everybody's going to have an opinion, right? I've been doing this for, I'm wrapping up my 14th year as a sexual abuse recovery coach. And over those years, I've gotten hate mail, I've gotten all sorts of things. And it's exactly what you say, like being able to stay and stand in your own power and really in the knowledge of your own worth and your own value and the integrity of what you're doing. And if you can do that, then the naysayers or the things that come at you from other directions won't land as much. The
Mhm.
other thing that I'm really connecting to from what you just shared is how important it is that we do continue to try to cultivate our capacity to see past our prejudices, to
Yeah,
see past our initial gut reactions to people, and that ultimately really trying to see who the person is,
yeah,
get to the heart of the person and the spirit of who they are, and trying to connect with that. But we first have to do that for ourselves, and
mhm.
then we can do that for others.
Yeah, and actually the way that I call it now in my interaction sometimes is that I undress people's souls, and for me it's
Woo!
so important.
Yes. Undress your soul, baby.
Yeah,
Yeah.
undress your soul.
I love that.
It's really about
That's so
shedding the
good.
layers of like all the conditioning and all the anything that is unnecessary, like everything that's ego based. I don't care. I want to get to know someone for who
Mhm.
they truly are. And yeah, for me, it's the most beautiful way to
Mhm.
connect with someone is
Yeah,
to undress your soul.
I love it. As you think about people who are listening, who are maybe thinking that they want to take a next step and start a journey like Beyond Surviving, or even any other, reach out for any other type of support, and but they're feeling afraid, they're feeling unsure about that. What would you like to say to somebody in that place in their journey?
um, for me, what I would say is that the biggest fear you should have is to remain in a situation where you feel stuck.
Mm.
And it is scary to face your demons in a way. It is scary to look um, at what's going on inside of you. It is scary to look at things that are not working out in your life.
Mm.
You don't have to look that much into the past. The past is the past. You don't have to start shaking that up. But what matters is your life now and your life tomorrow. And if you feel that something is not functioning and repeating itself in a cycle, and is not fulfilling for you, then you have to break that one way or another. And the thing is that if you don't seek help when you start noticing that,
Mm.
you'll see that life is going to throw more and more challenges at you and shake you, up to a point where sometimes it's going to shake you really hard until you finally make a decision to change. And I'm saying this because I have interviewed in hundreds of people that have had this sort of aha moment, this awakening where they decide to take a new direction in life. So seek any help that you can. I really love to work with you, Rachel, because you speak from a place of um, credibility and authority and love, like, and you have dedicated your life so far to helping other women and men, and how beautiful is that. So you have a lot of empathy and understanding, all the tools, and it's like a shortcut for people, because sometimes you spend your whole life trying to figure out what's going on.
Mhm.
Sometimes, I don't know if you believe in this, but sometimes several lives doing that. And
Yeah.
I'm all about breaking patterns for your own benefits. So I definitely recommend
Mm.
any possible way to do that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was such an honor to walk alongside you in your healing journey. Ellen, the one I see in you is powerful, embodied, sexy, intelligent, imaginative, creative, empowered world changer. And it is such a joy to see you continuing to thrive and go out into the world and do such really beautiful things. Thank you so much for being here today and for being my guest.
Thank you. It's all my pleasure. Thank you so much, Rachel. Much love.
Much love to you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today and for listening. Don't forget to visit rachelgrantcoaching.com to learn more about sexual abuse recovery coaching and explore the other resources available on the site. If you'd like to make a donation in support of the podcast, go to bit.ly/Beyond Surviving Podcast Donation. All contributions will be applied towards funding scholarships, the running of donation-based and free programs, and making sure that those reaching out for support get what they need. And please be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. We have so much more to share, so come back next time. And until then, take really good care of you.